gotta push a button here and stuff, so.
All pushed. Okay.
Roll call. Brian?
Present.
Tyler?
Here.
Kim? Here. John?
Here.
And Deb? Here. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Brian? Ayes? Ayes?
Aye. What are we eyeing?
The agenda, we have a motion by Tyler and a second
Oh,
by
I'm
Kim.
sorry.
Oh,
All
okay.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
I think John's supposed to be doing stuff, honestly.
Next.
You should do it a couple
We
of
have a
times
public
so that they
forum,
know
but
what to do.
I don't believe anybody's here for a public forum. Okay. So we'll go into examine the financial records for June 30th. In your packet, you should have a document like this, lots and lots of pages, but that's not what I'm actually going to go over. I actually want to just go over the summary of that. And so the financial summary of the fiscal year 18, our goal target of the solvency was 7%, and to reach the solvency of 12% by 2020. And this is unaudited at this point. The certified annual reports are all due on Monday the 17th, so we're reviewing it tonight without meeting the deadline yet. But so where we ended up is, as of right now, the fiscal year 18 ended at 11.7% solvency, and which means that we should reach our 12% by fiscal year 19, so we're a year ahead of schedule. Now, how did this happen? Our actual expenditures were under our budget, and so of course that gave us a gain of $803,450 instead of the anticipated $185,000. So with that being said, in the reports I have the year-to-date revenue, the year-to-date expenditures, and with a gain of $803,000. And a little bit more detail up. So what's conclusion? This will also increase our, so as we move forward, this will allow us to, we want to hit that sweet spot of our break-even point of the revenues and expenditures. So with that in mind, going forward, to maximize we want to keep our property taxes level, and so with doing that and maximizing our 405, our tax levy is going to be showing as we get out to year 4 and 5, it dropping a little bit, because we will not be able to cash reserve as much as we have in the past, because we're gaining on a better solvency positioning. So cash reserves, which we've been able to maximize, they're going to hold back as our cash position and our solvency is much better position. So we'll have to work that out as we go through the budgeting process. So what that allows us to do is by fiscal year 19, we had a $300,000, we set priorities with the administration. So for fiscal year 19, our goal was $300,000, which we're already in that year. So as we go forward, we can increase our priorities, the amount we fund, put in there, do some things. We also have a project that we're in the middle of that we know the unexpected, the equipment, the furniture, things like that. So going forward, we should feel pretty good about being where we are at, meeting our goals, and being in the direction we have some cushion for that, for any of the unknowns that.
Gail, do we have any sense of the increase in operating costs we'll have after all of the additions are done, or we really don't have a sense of that yet?
I haven't seen anything on like just the general like heating and cooling and things like that, but
Yeah,
we're increasing space, but yet we're hopefully, our goal is to maximize our efficiencies, but personnel wise, we're going to have to look at, we're increasing square footage. So not only on the instructional side of it, you know, the maintenance and the staffing for that we'll have to look at. So, and then I also included in the special education supplement and the certified in the transportation. I wanted to, later on we have for the cash reserves, our special ed deficit increased. And the balance, our special ed deficit increased $64,000. And that basically was because of tuition outs, which we do not educate. Our revenues and expenditures are really good for the kids we educate in our district. It was out of our control. So we, of our tuitioned out students, we had 21 students. The year before we had 16. So our enrollment for those tuition out kids went up. Our expenses increased $141,000 for those tuition out kids. And for those students made up 69% of that increase. So it is what it is. We have the obligation to educate those kids, and if the parents are in our district, that's what happens. So, and so we have that as a board action later on to do the cash, SBRC, to get that cash back. If we have the capacity when we budget, that we have the cash reserve to do that. And then I know last year at this time we had a transportation report that we didn't like the numbers a little bit, so we concentrated on that, spent some time to evaluate that, and I showed that on that report to show that our average number of students increased, our route mileage increased, so we feel like we did a better job at actually allocating those kids and those miles this year. And so then following for the August 31st, which is also June 30th is what you're approving for the annual reports. And then the August 31st is, I have that included in here. And not much activity for revenue and expenditures. September will start the big revenues and the big expenditures because of salaries and then state aid. And our property taxes will come in. The line item budget will be complete after the September 20th payroll. Cash flow and our cash position is good and all. Balances, our capital projects, I move money around. We have it in investments, so I move that around. And you'll see that that's a negative, but we have money in the investments to move in. It's not a problem. Our bidding is tomorrow at 4 p.m. for that. Our projects, our Fund 31, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Published budget, we're doing good. Major purchases for the PEPL. We have, you'll see we have quite the expense for, we had a power surge clear back in May. So that is all going through the PEPL, but we have a deductible of, I think, $1,000. So all those expenses come through PEPL, but we will be reimbursed for those. But I think we'll have expenses for the next 3 months probably to complete this project, and it's been happening since May, so it's a long project to get this accomplished. Activity fund report has some negative balances, but the kids are back, the activity's in full swing, so it's just a matter of working that out with each individual. Nutrition revenues have increased, expenditures have also increased, but not too concerned about that. We had, it could have increased. It's kind of hard to tell early on. We had one additional day of service compared to a year ago, but we also had increase of enrollment. So we'll know better as we move down as the months proceed. Here's the individual, I've added all the supplemental reports in there if you want to. It's related to the summary. So if anybody has any questions about.
Yeah, going all the way back to the general fund, can you just give a couple of either intentional things that we did not spend money on, or what were the big tickets that made up the $617,000 less expenses than what we budgeted?
We basically do a line item budget and we fill in we have a line item budget of $150,000 for technology built into the general fund. and that's never ever spent. It's something that the district, because we spend all of our PEPL, all of our technology is a allowable expense in PEPL, so why would you use general fund? But that's always been there, and it's just kind of a safety net. So we had we've had some early retirements every year, so and we've been, the other thing is the administration really does a good job at, it's basically, our teachers are, if they need it, they get it. It's not if, you know, they're used to living within the same budget year after year after year, unless we have an increase in students in CT. We've looked at it differently. If there's been some areas that have grown, and we've addressed that, but it's not, since I came here, I think the year before, it was a 10% across the board cut. Our staff has been basically operating within that with a few tweaks here and there, so they don't spend a lot in their classrooms for supplies, but they do get what they need. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that. But overall, it adds up, and then if you have a good year of, you know, we had a few areas that for snow removal was up, but then our costs, and we're not done yet, but our costs for like mowing and things has been down. So overall, without, you know, digging into it with a lot of detail.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's obviously good news from a solvency standpoint and good news from a cash standpoint. I think it'd be important to know, well, where did it come from, so that as you're budgeting for next year, and then I see a comment about, well, we can increase expenditures 7.9% to be closer to break even. Well,
how do we do
based
that?
on what we actually spent or what the budget was? I mean, just encourage you to look into, well, what made up the difference there. And again, it's a positive from a solvency and from a cash standpoint. If there's things we didn't do that we should have been doing, then that's probably not a positive.
Yep. Well, and did you indicate that when teachers ask, they get it, right? I mean, so they just might not be asking, or maybe not.
That would be
accustomed to asking.
That would be a principal question, because the principals come to me and say, "Hey, is there something we can do here?" And then we look at the line item budget. So, you know, you know, you come to me with some questions about growth in certain areas, and but I don't know your day-to-day conversations with people, you know, in different areas and different groups. But
I would say for the most part, I'm just speaking for myself, most people come to me and say, what do you think about this? And we usually discuss it, and if we feel like it's a need, then we move forward with it. If it's not, then we discuss why and what other funding sources might be available. And we just kind of do it by department. Some departments are always going to have more, like for example, science, they're using things, they're using chemicals, they're using supplies, they're going to have to constantly be replaced. But some departments don't spend any money, they're happy with what they have, and others go slightly over. We try to balance based on, you know, this and that, and sometimes it goes over a little bit, but usually not by much.
Carrie, at one time, you know, when we were making some of our cuts back a few years ago, we did some things where we cut out some curriculum things. Those have been reinstated for the most part. So, you know, the question is a good question. What's happening there? I think that we are trying to make sure that if there were cuts, that they are trying to be reinstated. But I will tell you already, our administrative team we're already delving into the fact of, okay, when we're looking at this, two of the bigger classes right now are in the middle school, right, Mike? Yep. So how's that going to work when they move into the high school? Is it going to be another section of each of the requirements? And then special ed, we've talked about that. I know that Stacy and I have had conversations about in the elementary, there's some numbers that we've seen are maybe a little bit larger than what we had originally thought that we had seen, and you see that in the overall budget. But we're going to have some things that we're going to have to make some priorities, but I did want to let you know that there's some things that we have put back into it. And I think that as administrators, they really do a fine job of trying to make sure that if a teacher needs something, you know, is it a need or is it a want, and going from there. But you guys have anything you want to add to that, and what was added?
Well, I'd say also another thing, and Carrie can probably speak to this more than I can, but we used to spend, you know, tons of money on materials from a curriculum standpoint, and now a lot of those things can be found on the internet. You can read it, you can, you know, borrow some things from here and there. There's a lot more resources that are, you know, free resources that are out there, where before we would have to buy packages of things or parts of this or.
Yeah, I think I do think we're, you know, we're trying to be good consumers. And that's, you know, there's a double-edged sword there. I mean, what we don't want to do is we don't want anybody to feel like if we need something, I think we do a good job of saying, let us know. I mean, we have to be responsible for what we're getting, but we don't want our students to do without or not be able to do something, a lab or something. There's a way we'll find that. I mean, we've got funds that if we've depleted, you know, whether it's a supply line item, we've got foundation funds for STEM and science that we can tap into there. We're very lucky to have that. I mean, we're able to do a lot of the science and STEM activities that we do because of that, those funds. So,
I'll look into the details of that. And the one thing that did pop in my mind is we categoricals is a big thing that we have big carryovers on categoricals. So we have to have the idea that it's there as a possibility, but as an expense, we build it in, but it may not necessarily be spent. It's carried over into the next year. And so we have some big ending fund balances in our categoricals, like PD. You know, at the end, it's a timing like I'm going to be paying out professional development for curriculum that was done this summer, but it didn't get in last fiscal year. So we have a carryover, and then we're going to expense it the next year. So we have big categorical expenses that at any point in time, if you don't budget for that, because you can, it's a carryover, they can expense it at any time. So you plan for that. Now, you may not expense it, so then you would underspend that categorical line item for that. And we have, and that would be interesting too, is another piece is to show you of our ending fund balance of that, how much is actual categorical. And it's not something that you can spend on everything. So that would be another interesting piece for you guys to see, that the dollars we have in there that is earmarked for only that program. And it also, we can think about as we move forward, we have the flexibility to spend those funds as a board. Some of those areas that you can take action, and when you have a purpose, you can actually have a hearing and spend that for another purpose that you want to spend it on. So that would be a very good piece, I think, is part of this. But we'll work out the details and get more information that we'll bring back to you guys.
It's 434,000 was instructional. I don't know what's all in that instructional category, but that was the
Is that the science and the stuff that they're talking about?
Categoricals would be all instruction, would be a built-in. Categoricals would be like homeschool assistance programs, your TQ, your PD funds, all your state, usually on, it would be all instructional. But
one thing that we also do is for example, with Mike's larger class sizes, we look at that the year before that summer, and we're like, okay, what are we going to need to make sure that we don't want anybody to go without. So we make sure that we've got those for that class coming in. That's a larger class. We want to make sure that if there's materials, we want all kids to have those.
And that was like my point. Was not, are we making sure that we're not overspending, but just that people can get so used to maybe not asking because they are trying to be so budget conscious, which is great. But it's hard, you know, you hear all these things about teachers buying their own stuff, and you're like, we have money in some cases. I just hope that as long as the need is, you know, As long as the need is established, that's great.
The answer is, at least in my building, it hasn't been no. It sometimes is not yet,
Yeah.
but I haven't had to tell a teacher no if they've come to me with a request.
And like John just mentioned with 434 in instructional, I mean, we're not talking, when we're at $617,000, it's not materials, I don't think. It's salaries, right?
Mhm.
And so, but my question is, at this point, and again, appreciate that we're being fiscally responsible, absolutely do, but are there areas where we're not funding another person, whether that's in the class or maintenance or an assistant coach for middle school where there's safety issues because we don't have the money when in fact we do? So again, I'm not trying to open up the floodgates, but I think it would be good to know what the 617 is, and John just said, well, 2/3 of it's salaries, so.
Instruction.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that goes to your other point, Tyler, like, the question is, how reliable is that? Well, we continue to see this year over year, this sort of a savings or whatever. Or is this just happen to be a fluke, right?
Right, so you.
Not a fluke, but a one-off.
Right.
We're, with that 5-year projection, we're getting a lot better handle on the financial.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel a lot, we have some pretty good forecasting tools that I think is really helping us.
But it brings great questions. I mean,
Right.
and we, at least we have some questions to dig into. But the categoricals, I'm sure, is a big piece to this because we budget for those and we don't necessarily spend those. So we'll bring back the whole story later and at another meeting.
And that's kind of the one thing that's always made me scratch my head a little bit is we kind of have, here's kind of the worst case scenario, but we don't really put out the, here's kind of expected.
Yep.
We always go, and I get it, why, but having that expected is probably the missing piece as a board member that'd be like, okay, how different is it from expected? And it's probably about right on top of expected, or whatever the case may
Yep.
be.
Yep.
Makes sense.
So that might be the, okay, here's the budget, but here's the expected, and then here's how we really did. And then that would have all that categorical noise taken out of it.
So I'll bring that back in October with more detail. But overall, I think, going into it, it's kind of a relief knowing that we're headed in the right direction, which we knew every month when we're looking at it. It's like, great, we're ahead of schedule. But also knowing, don't know what the state's going to do. We're in the middle of a construction project. So it's a great position to be.
Yeah.
So we'll bring back more to the story. So.
Yeah, good job.
And I will meet the September 17th deadline, by the way, for those reports. So we need to approve the certified annual report, the special education supplement, and the transportation report. Is there a motion?
Second.
All ayes? Or A? All ayes?
Aye.
Sorry. I feel really awkward.
You're doing a great
You gotta
job.
do everything. You're trying to run the meeting, I gotta write it all down.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay. Minutes of this August 13th, we had a regular meeting and a special meeting that night.
Move approval.
Second.
Do I say, I'm just gonna say, is
Aye.
everyone in favor? Yep, all right.
Hi.
Aye.
Nice. Okay. Election of board president.
I make a motion to elect Brian Anderson as board president.
Second.
Okay, and do we do, somebody want to do is it a nomination cease? Or,
Yep.
I think that's normally what we do is somebody have a.
Any other nominations?
Okay,
Run unopposed.
Yeah, all right.
okay. We don't need these?
Thank you.
Okay.
With
Congratulations.
those
Thank
ballots?
you. Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Wait a
Well,
minute.
need to say yes so first, so, all in
Okay,
favor?
or do we need a
Roll call?
roll call to make it? So,
I don't think we
So
need
we
to
don't need
call
to-
it now.
okay.
All in
So-
favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
You squeaked by.
Now
Now you're in charge.
Okay, you're in
right?
charge now, and you'll do a much better job than the person before, not before for you, but for the
Alright.
meeting tonight.
So as my first order of business, we're gonna elect a vice president.
I nominate Deb Orhall for vice president.
I'll second that.
No.
I just did it. I have
I'll second that.
Thank you. I'm learning. That sounded like a great idea though, Kim.
Is there any other?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to say now. Is everyone in favor of that? Any
All in
other
favor.
elections? Nominations, sorry?
All in favor?
No, okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations, Deb.
I'm not gonna be here.
I'm
for
never
6
spending that
meetings.
much on a campaign again.
Yeah.
Okay,
Positive campaigns, that's great.
I guess we have appointed the board secretary and treasurer. We need to make sure we don't forget the oath of offices. I think that I have that on the agenda just so we don't
Okay.
forget.
Excellent. So I guess we'll move right on to appointing the board secretary and treasurer, which is Gail.
Anybody else want the job?
So we need a motion, right? Or do we?
Yes. Or you can appoint and as a president, and if everybody else is in favor, you
All
can
right.
do it however
I'm
you
gonna
want
appoint
to do
you. And is everybody else in favor of this?
Yes.
All right. I feel it's like such power up here.
Do we do this for president?
Yeah, how does this work?
it. Yeah. So I will administer it for the president and the vice president. So board member, board president and vice president, do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and will you faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge all the duties of the office of board president and the office of vice president in the Gilbert Community School District as of now or hereafter required by law?
Yes. Do I get to, I'm gonna swear you right in. So this is the board secretary oath of office. Gail, do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa? And will you faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge all the duties of the office of board secretary / business manager / treasurer in Gilbert Community School District as now or hereafter as required by law?
I do.
Excellent.
Congratulations, all three.
Yes, all right, we did it. Whew, almost sweaty. All right, so I guess we'll move on to talking about selecting meeting times, dates, times, and locations. Do we have any suggestions or recommended
We
changes?
had, we did one in July for the new year, so if there's any changes, that's what's posted on the website. Second Monday of the month. Meeting
6
time
p.m.
6 p.m. and we had that, and that, we posted that in July, so.
Does that still work for everybody?
Mhm.
All right. Do we need to have a motion on that, or?
Yeah, go ahead and do that, and then it'll be
Second.
formally.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
Mhm.
All right, all in favor? All
Aye.
right. Stands approved. Making a mock of this. Oops, sorry. Okay, and then next we need to name the Ames Tribune as our official publication. Do I
That's
have?
what we currently have, so.
Who we currently have, as I just found out. Is there any opposition to this, or can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands unopposed. Perfect, let's do this. All right, and next up on the exciting round of designations, we're going to choose the Allers and Cooney Law Firm as our legal counsel. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
We got a double first, do we need a second, or is that?
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll be on as a second.
Man, they are jamming on this, all
Who hasn't
right.
been able to do it for a couple of years?
I know, John's like, man, who's got freedom down there?
Hand up.
Yeah. I got nothing to do.
All right, was there official first and second?
Yeah, Kim.
Okay, good.
Motion and
All right,
John
sorry, all in
second.
favor?
Aye.
All right, stands unopposed, approved, good. Now, the next one is on this agenda here, and you may need to help me, Gail, but the board member committee assignments. This is talking specifically about the different committees we're a part of.
Yeah, and I don't know if we, in the past, this has to be part of this meeting. And I know we kind of have it, everybody kind of has their duties. So I just didn't know if you wanted to formally or ask, does everybody want the same assignments? I know John was on the auditing, and then we have the negotiation people.
Yeah.
This is, the groups I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
So it's part of the annual meeting, so.
We can have a board discussion on it, we're thinking we probably want to keep doing what we're doing, but if anybody feels strongly about wanting to do something else, that would be what we could talk about right now. But
So-
I'm willing to stay with the financial part and the negotiation.
Yeah, maybe we can list them, right? So we have financial negotiations, we have the policy review, I think, Tyler, the building facility stuff, thank you.
The long-term vision.
Long-term vision.
Do you want to hang with that, Deb?
Well, and that was one thing I was just going to mention. So I thought, as vice president, that I would be taking on the evaluation process, ensuring that.
Good.
And I've been working with Kim on the long-term vision,
Yeah.
and I was kind of trying to run point on that. But I didn't know if I could keep working on that, but maybe see if Kim was interested in running point. Just
On
to
which
maybe
one, Deb?
balance it a little bit.
On which one?
The long-term vision.
Okay.
I'm still involved, but I'm a little concerned with some career things at work about getting stretched thin with both of those. I think they're both big, but
Kim, how do you feel about that?
I don't know what you think.
We've both been involved since the beginning on the long-term vision. I think with this being my last year, I really, I think I'd like to continue on serving the district when I'm done. And I think it's a nice place for me to kind of slip into an ad hoc member maybe after I'm done. Though I think Deb needs to stay on point with Lindsay's evaluation piece and do those things. So I'm happy to help out there.
Was that a long way to say yes? You don't mind taking
No, yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure which way that was going to that last
Long term?
Got it.
Yeah, just the.
I see how it's going to be.
I'm
Oh,
in
you
there.
wait.
Kim and
I'm still a committee member,
Deb.
but I'm just not.
For the
really
long-term
the point
vision.
person
Yep.
on
And
it,
then-
yeah.
Kim, you feeling okay with policy? Continuing on?
Yeah, I have to mention, I don't care for the way we've been doing policy the last couple of months. I feel like it's a lot to read and discuss in here. I like it when we work,
Yep.
when someone, not me,
Mhm.
but when someone works through the kinks outside of the boardroom, and then we bring recommendations and reasons at the board table. And I think it's much less cumbersome that way.
Yep.
So yes, I'm fine staying on policy. Another long answer, but.
And Brian, were you on that too?
I was as well, and I wondered, do I need to be a part of any negotiation things as president? Is that an office position, or is that a personal?
It's not required for a
Okay.
president, so.
I'd rather do, yeah, I mean, I'd rather focus on communication and policy personally and stick with those two. But I'm happy, I mean, again, I don't know what the presidency has in store for me.
Do we have any holes that we're concerned with?
SIAC has been kind of spotty, I feel like I know, John, you and I had kind of been tag teaming it, but I think there maybe was times when, I don't know if we ever went together.
No,
actually.
Thursdays are no good for me, so that was where I was coming out. But I think the long term,
Yeah.
I think that would be needs to be coupled up with the long term
Yeah.
planning, because I think
Is
we
that
need
something
to.
we could tag team? I'm talking to Kim and I could maybe.
'Cause
Does
I-
it need to be this one person, or did you say you can tag team too?
No, yeah, I mean, John and I did it, but I don't know if we ever went together, actually.
But I think that bringing that element to SIAC would be
Yeah.
important.
Right, I agree.
So to back Carrie at those meetings of, here's where we're going and why, and she'd have board support there, so.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I
That'd be
think
fantastic.
that makes some sense.
And so the financial negotiation, it was John, and who was the other person?
Kim was last year.
What?
Weren't you on negotiations last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then will
I mean,
the
Kim, that's three things you sort of said yes to. Are you okay with all this?
I am not gainfully employed, but I'm happy to let someone else do it if they wish, but I'm fine with it.
Okay, well, let's just keep it as is. I mean, we're free to change this, right,
Yes.
as we need?
It was
Okay.
like last
So I
time.
have financial
It was like
negotiations, John and Kim, policy of Kim and Brian, building facility, I have Tyler.
Tyler, is anyone else working with you on the facilities?
Lindsay?
Mhm.
All right, stick his name in.
And then
there.
long-term vision and SIAC is Kim and them.
Yep.
Sound good?
Perfect, thank you.
And I'll just have the board appointed those positions, so you don't have to take action.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, well, then we're up to oral reports and board reports. I think before we move on to the ISB, does anyone have anything to discuss or bring up that's not on the agenda already?
Only thing would be just facility update. I mean, the Hala and Story have already started the next round of project teams. You sat in on
Yep.
one, and I sat in on one last week. Lindsay, you've probably gone to several. So I think those are going well.
Awesome.
The idea is they're seeking input for the detailed design for the second round. And obviously tomorrow or a week from now, we'll know a lot more about where our funding is. But they're moving right ahead with the goal of expediting that second round into November, as we talked about last month, so.
That's exciting.
I think it's going well. I mean,
I agree.
you sat in on that.
I agree. It's been some good conversation. Just to even follow up a little bit on what Tyler's saying, I think that in both the buildings now, Stacy's building, I think, was finished up today. Is that right, as far as your security? No? Or getting close? Close, okay. And I think this building is pretty much done, so hopefully we've got those off the plate, and like Tyler said, I think the meetings are going well because there's good conversation. I had an opportunity to sit on the baseball, softball one the other night. Good conversation, very good conversation.
All right, and then the next, I mean, is there anything, any other board reports? All right, we can move on to the ISB annual convention, which is November. Just to get this out of the way, so I am going as our representative, legislative representative, the first day, and then joining whoever's going on the second day as well. I can't recall, is everybody going? All right, that's pretty fun. Excellent.
Is it the same, like if you go Thursday, Friday, or just Friday, is it the same?
It's the
It's the
same.
same, okay.
And then there's one Friday morning, Ryan, for the president.
All right, perfect.
It's really good.
It is a good
It's, I mean, it's really good.
It's a joint president superintendent one,
Yep.
isn't it?
Yeah, it
We
is
get to
good.
sit together?
We do.
Oh, that'd be great.
That was good practice.
Yeah, tasty. Okay, excellent. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
All right, then we can move on to the 2018-19 district priorities update.
I just have this on here because I wasn't sure, you know.
Do we have any either on the sort of the long-term process update or anything we have, I guess, for this school year? We're kind of in a...
I think that Kim will correct me if I'm wrong about this, but we did meet in between just a couple weeks ago to talk about it. We have a convention coming up, I think in 2 weeks. And so tonight, I think we were just going to focus on that policy. It's up
Yep,
again.
yep.
And then I think right after that, the next time, I think we have a recommendation for some ideas of how we'd like to keep maybe a more constant communication of that long-term priorities. We kind of wanted to wait until that conference. I think that's going to be a really good time for all of us to really get together and solidify that. So not really an official update today. We did meet, and I think we had made some good progress, but
Good meeting.
nothing to share just yet.
Yeah, no, that's
Feel
fine.
like
I mean,
that?
I think,
Okay.
no, I think I'm loving what's happening here, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
What would you describe as the expectations, if any, for annual goals this year?
I think we do have, part of what we're working on, I think, is going to become some of those annual goals. I think we've got let me get this right, the
We have-
engagement, that's the not
Yes.
emotional. I can't think of the term of that.
Cognitive
second goal.
engagement
Yep.
for the instructional practices inventory where, you know, we've already got those dates set where
Mhm.
we have data collectors, which are our own teachers going in, collecting that cognitive engagement data. Then bringing that data back to buildings and setting building goals from what they see. And we're going to be doing those data collection days 4 times a year. So actually the first one is, the first round is next week. So, and then in October, we're meeting another part of that by training another round of 13 people here in our district for that cognitive engagement piece.
Is the training happening in our building again?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'd love to go to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just
See
send
what
me
I can
some
do.
info
I will
on it?
send you the info and see what I can do.
I'll say nothing, I'll just sit back, I promise.
Carrie, would you say too about those first couple bullets of the portrait of a graduate really do turn out to be
Oh,
work
that,
that you're
yes.
intending to complete? So part of what we talked about last time when we met was breaking those out into more, we only had like 2 bullet items, breaking those out, and that would represent work to be completed this year.
Getting community, engaging our community
I would say that's
a little bit more in
much
that
I think
work
along with the
of what that
financial
is, so
one.
we know that we're getting
Do we
that,
have the financial one?
that feel for that, of what our community, you know, not just one group of people. And I will say, I feel that our district is doing this a little bit differently than what a lot of districts that I've met with or networked with, in the fact that a lot of the portrait of a graduate work, this, like when we're really defining what our words are, a lot of districts, their administrative team does most of that work. And they'll do dipstick points, but we're really doing it in a more unique way, because we want to make sure that it's the right work.
Yeah.
And it's really naming what we feel as a community is important. So just an FYI to that.
And something we talked about is making a regular time to connect with our community. And rather than having more meetings or more forums and more things all the time, you know, something that I don't even remember, I think Stacy, yeah, just said, well, why don't we meet at 5:30 before the board meeting, invite the community, have a purpose. Sometimes it's informative. Hey, this is what we're doing. You know, this is what we're seeing, but sometimes use it as an opportunity to collect information from our patrons. And so it's just set that every meeting day, you know, anyone who wants to come from 5:30 to 6, and it's not carrying over, it's not disrupting, you know, it's just an opportunity for us to invite anyone who wants to come.
When we thought our hope would be to start that in October and really do a share out from attending that conference that we're going to be attending at the end, you know, at the end of this month.
Because even if we have that videoed, you know, the presentation of what was going on at that, it starts to develop the groundwork of, hey, this wasn't done in a closet.
That's
You know,
right. Yeah.
We went down with board members and did this, and here's what some of the great takeaways. And it starts to show that steering to those high-level priorities. And even though they're not set in stone, this was where it originated from. And you know, we're trying to keep people abreast of what's going on as we go. You know,
You're
I think
exactly right.
the
That's one of our hopes, is that by having that at a different time than the board meeting, but still having it so the community can be involved. I think you're dead on when you say that.
And I like the video because it's like, you know, when we have these meetings, we only get a handful of people, but, you know, when people have concerns or have interest in it, we can be like, hey, go out on the website. We met on September 11th and we talked all about it. And if you got any questions, you know, let me know.
Yep.
So just back to my original question, is there an expectation for annual goals, or are we working towards just long range? And if there is for annual goals, is there a time frame?
For 18-19?
Yeah, the school year we're in right now.
Do you want to,
Yeah.
you want to talk about that 103? Would that be a good time to talk about that now?
So I think I'm in kind of laying out.
I think
the
that would
103,
kind of
maybe
help.
that would kind of show.
Yeah, I think if we talk about that draft of 103, that'd help answer Tyler's questions, I think.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
I agree with you there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ooh, hello.
Perfect.
That's big, yeah. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
This-
Deb, why don't you share this
Okay.
with us?
So this is I brought a revision of this the last time, and I think it was off the mark on a few key spots. And so I kind of tried to take that feedback And I want to thank John. I think he was willing to also kind of act as a sounding board on some of this as well. I think what we were looking for was more of a kind of a policy that outlined a repeatable process for how we can accomplish our long-term priorities and goal setting. At the same time, I think I was kind of headstrong about like, I don't want this to be how, but what needs to be done, to leave some flexibility for how we go about, maybe with some non-negotiables kind of tied in there. So that's how this lays out. Am I supposed to read it, or can I just give
No, can you, yeah, maybe especially the things that changed from the last time you presented.
Well, it is quite a bit different
Okay.
from that last, so the long-term priority on the left-hand side is what was in place before.
Yeah.
But not my revised one, like what
Okay,
was there
yeah,
before.
yeah.
And so the next one talks about kind of this repeatable process where every 4 years we kick off what we call, what did I call it? Was it like a framework? The
Long-term
framework, which is the
yeah.
long-term priorities, where a small group of district folks get together and maybe brainstorm a few goals that they would like to work on. And that would kind of be, I think, what maybe you've seen to date, those high-level bullet points, just more about what we want to try to accomplish over the next 3 to 5 years. That then goes into what we would call, is that the roadmap? No, I should have read this a little bit more closely. I think I call it the roadmap is the next section. And I would say that's where we are at now, this long-term priorities group. We're expanding our group a little bit.
Yep.
Now we've included all of the administrators. We're looking for some input at various points. And that's where we're going to maybe look at this in more detail. We're going to bring in a third-party vendor. And I think I do say in here that we should seek input from a variety of stakeholders, including vendors, to kind of develop these more detailed roadmap of the 3 to 5 years, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. This work, the roadmap, needs to be completed by March in order to give time for the annual goals to be developed, on a yearly basis. Now, Tyler, that doesn't really speak to your, because we really didn't, last spring, we didn't develop new annual goals.
New long-term goals.
Well,
Yeah.
we have annual goals that were developed last year that are kind of the old flavor, right? So back in March, or I shouldn't say old flavor, but they're not these,
they're
they're not
done.
the,
Yeah,
They're done, they should be completed.
right.
Mm-hmm.
so this, and part of the long-term priorities in this roadmap is kind of the work this year will be developing those details and laying out that plan so that in March we have the opportunity by the end of the school year, I believe it calls out in June, to have the annual goals that are in support of this
Yep.
outlined.
Now, as far as this year goes, Carrie and the administrative team really are actively engaged in Portrait of a Graduate. That's work that they would have done regardless. Same as they did AIW or PLCs or project-based learning. But as we as a small group talked, in lieu of this completed process, it really makes sense for the board to get behind them this year because it's a huge undertaking, just like we did with the teacher leader conversion, if you will, or implementation. So, I guess we just need to kind of look at what we expect for this year, put it into a format so that it can be communicated to the board, knowing that the process has been started for the long range. And I don't think Portrait of a Graduate should be the sole goal for this year. Don't get me wrong. But
Right, so I don't disagree with everything that's been said. We have had long-range planning in the past, and there are 3 large priorities back there on the wall from last year that we would put annual goals underneath in preparation for new long-range, right?
Yeah.
So that's my question is, are we going to do that this year, or do we do a year where we don't have any annual goals?
I think that we do have that in the fact that the work that we've projected out for example, Portrait of a Graduate, our goal is that we are going to define those, get those pillars defined. We're going to be working on a mission and vision statement that go towards that. And then along with that, then we're beginning that grade span work of once you've named it, what does that look like for our kids? So to me, maybe I'm wrong here, but
No, I think
that's
you're spot
how.
on. I think you're spot on, and that would be under the learning.
Yes,
that should be the topic,
exactly.
right?
That's how I see that.
So I'm just saying, well, if we've got them, codify them, and then
And
we've got,
communicate 'em.
and we've got also, in the past, we've had, well, what are we gonna do to develop our staff as another section, and then more of a finance or facility goal, right? Solvency being one. I guess unless I missed it, we don't have that for this calendar year, but maybe we do, we just need to codify it, and that's what I'm
I
asking.
think that's it. I think we have to do that work.
Because I don't disagree with this, but I don't think we want to wait till next June to do annual
Right.
goals for this year.
Right. And I think that some of the work, and I think maybe this is where I might lack the experience on this, but some of that portion of the graduate work, we know that first year, to Carrie's point, these are the 5, 6, 7 things that have to be accomplished, and that can be turned into a goal that should be reported against. I know we talked about that last time, the
Right.
financial and the IPI.
Yeah,
So-
but I understand what Tyler's saying, in absence of a completed process, we really do, for communication purposes to the district, need to say, these are our annual goals. So we need to take that poster and we need to up it. I mean, we need to just put in what our goals are for this year and then reformat however we're communicating to the board. So.
Kim, is that something you feel comfortable with bringing next board meeting? A draft, we need to have a work session to talk through that, what's best?
I don't know. I really think the administrative team is on point in doing work. I think it's just got to be, like I said, communicated. So I can work with Carrie and we can just update that.
I think we have those. I really do.
Yep, I
We just
agree.
need to.
I just think
maybe-
it needs to be
Yeah,
documented.
yep. We'll just tweak through that and then
Perfect.
present it to the board.
Is that the time?
Maybe we can do that during our downtime. Anytime.
So Deb and I talked on this, and the only point of disagreement that we didn't get worked out would be, I would like to have a third-party facilitator, which is different than a third-party vendor. So a third-party vendor's coming here to sell you something. A facilitator is coming to say, hey, does this plan go like everybody else that does this? What we would want is a seasoned person that has done a lot of long-term goals for schools. And they would just be there to be like, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Really to keep us in sync as a board of directors and administration, and kind of help and provide the brains for the first time we're kind of rolling this out on a bigger scale, is what I would say. But that being said, I get it on one voice at the table, but that was really about the only point.
I think that's the intent. I think it's a difference in words, don't you?
Well, first of all, I use in my other job word, sorry, not third-party vendor. Right, to your point, it is a facilitator, not, in some cases, it is a type of vendor, because
Sure.
we're looking at people like Gallup and somebody
Whoever,
who could help us.
right.
I think our only difference, John, honestly, was just the timing, and just feeling that maybe that first flush, it's important that we look as a district and think about what we want, so we don't come at that with a blank slate. Because the very next point, where we're doing that roadmap, I do mention that I think
Yeah.
the party is.
Just wanted to,
Every year, 21
that I would
those
have,
folks.
I would have, started, or I mean,
Yeah.
I would get one right now to say what that looks like
And-
going forward, and I
Absolutely.
get that we have a disagreement on that, and that's okay.
Yeah, and where we are right now is the roadmap phase.
Yeah, I think
We're
it's
not at
time.
that
I mean,
beginning, we didn't want to come with a blank slate and just kind of have an outside.
No, but there's something in between, is what I'm saying. There's something in between starting with a blank slate in 2021.
Yeah.
I would be like, now's the time.
And quite honestly, I'm pretty excited to go to conference, and I'm hoping there are other board members there who have gone through this process. I hope that, that we've got folks other than administrators and teachers to, and there are a couple sessions actually that address that.
I thought
So-
there were two,
Yeah.
as I was looking through that.
Yeah, so maybe you guys will have, a sense of whether it's something you want to do or not do after you go. So I mean, it's not.
Definitely something we
I
want
would,
to do.
I would still support, the policy as it is.
I know this doesn't answer your third-party vendors situation, but we are very fortunate. We are a member of a consortium where we take and that we can go ahead and have them review our process and help us move along. So that.
This guy's giving me a hard time about being the president. We all agree with what you're saying. We love it. Is there any? We're not approving this one yet. That's lumped into the next section. But
And it can be pulled out.
Okay.
You can have up to 3 readings, so.
Okay.
Whatever, so.
I mean, I guess I'm looking to you all. Like, do we want a third reading to wrestle with some of the words? Are we okay? I mean, I look at it and think that personally, Deb and Kim and everybody back there have done a ton of work on this. The timing of it doesn't seem that important to me. I wouldn't want to wrestle with it. I'd just rather trust what you all came up with, as long as we're confident that this has some external thought and validation to it. That's the thing I like about it. But do we want a third reading where we want to wrestle through this again? Or are we like, hey, this is good now, we can go ahead and change it again if we find that our timing was off on this?
I think we need to change the word, Gail. I mean, it needs to not be vendors, it needs to be
Do I have vendor
facilitators.
in
That's
there?
what it was, no?
No,
I thought
but
you-
there isn't anything explicit in here, so I would agree with John. I mean, look, we're spending $14 million on facilities this year, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of money and people to help us with that, right? How important can long-range priorities and strategy be for a school district, especially with all the pressures that are coming, right, with funding and all? So I would agree with John. I would like to see that we are using a third party to help facilitate
So I mean,
that.
can we just take out the word potential? We don't have to do it tonight,
Yeah.
but, right, like taking out the word potential, just make that, hey,
Right.
this framework should include suggested high-level priorities and potential third-party source, or sorry, as well as third-party sources. Oh, no, that's not talking about doing that, like,
Yeah, and I say down there should seek input from. The thing
you
is,
want to make that stronger, is that what you're
I
saying,
think
Tyler?
the thing is that the third party is not necessarily for each goal, each long term, it will be different, so I just kind of wanted to leave some
I
flexibility.
disagree. I mean, I'm talking.
The process.
The process, 30,000 foot.
Yeah,
And that you've got somebody.
Yeah.
that's what they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like hiring
I
an
think
architect
that's, I
to
totally, I do
design a
respect it,
building.
I also
It's
think that
not
we
they're
have
gonna
the
tell you
folks
what to build.
here that can help with that as well.
Oh.
And I don't know that that's an expensive.
Yeah, well, I'm not making this into that there's anybody in here that's not competent. I'm saying that's an important thing for the district, that you're saying on this, we're saying on this policy, it's every 4 years. I'm saying bring in somebody from the outside and help us,
Every 4 years.
every 4 years.
But other than that,
Like,
then the
would you-
annual
would-
stuff we do.
Would you
because-
consider Ed Leader 21?
Sure.
Because they've been in this the whole time. And it wasn't dictated
But-
by policy that they do that,
Yeah, so
You know,
that's
that's
portrait of
a-
a graduate, right?
right?
That's
Right.
that district long-term priorities.
And so you're wanting
It's
somebody
one
who comes
piece
in
of
and
that.
facilitates all aspects.
Big
of
picture,
it.
yeah.
And
Are we
I
looking
think the main thing they bring is they just bring an outside perspective. And that's kind of helpful sometimes, you know, that you can dismiss it, like we had them come into the bank and it's like, we're not doing that. But it's a new set of eyes to look at it. So it isn't like
It could
you
be-
just follow them, but it does give you a different look of someone that isn't so ingrained that they can't.
Could be somebody from IASB. I mean, I'm not saying you
Yeah,
gotta spend
absolutely.
$10,000 or $100,000 on it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
somebody
I
from the
would love
outside
that.
that comes in and goes, hey, I've got some experience with some other school districts.
Yeah.
I think you guys should be thinking of it a little broader here. Hey, have you-
I will say, I think we did compile a list, and I think I like, John, one thing that you mentioned was somebody from education that had educational perspective. And so we did have a pretty long list at one point of some pretty renowned within the state, whether they're superintendents that have done a lot of this work, a lot of things. And so I'm happy to hear you say you want that to be somebody education related. So I didn't necessarily always know that was who
Yeah.
you wanted as a third party, so I think that's.
Well, I wanted somebody that you guys would be like, man, this guy knows what he's doing. Look what he did at that school or this school, or man, he's a, you know, somebody that you guys would have a lot of confidence in from a standpoint of, if this guy has done this and been there before, and he could at least help us tweak what we think we already want to do already. So it isn't a function of somebody coming in and changing everything you want to do, but it's just that fresh set of eyes to kind of be, you know, it's really just to facilitate.
That's
what
learned
we
from
need.
other districts.
Yeah, so we could learn, yeah, exactly, learn to.
And I think we're all in agreement on this. I think that happens without it being dictated by policy, but we can put it there. It was a little confusing, I'll be honest, throughout, because it felt like in all other policies, we're trying to go back to what IASB has as standard, and this is one we're not.
Well, and we've kind of struggled to get alignment, you know, before
Yeah,
you got
so I
on
think it
that,
was
so
kind
that's
I was
part of
trying to
it.
keep it as something,
Yeah.
you know, that is not so specific. I personally,
I think that we should bring it back next month after we've been away and we've been at conference, and we can talk with other people, not only about Portrait of a Graduate, but also because the long-term priorities are so wrapped around this work, I think we'll come back with some information and perhaps some names and some ideas.
Okay.
So, you know, maybe we'll tweak this between now and then
Yeah.
a little bit, right?
Sure.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
We're getting real
That's
close,
fine.
so I'm not
Yeah.
so worried.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fine. I don't think I'm going to do much with it though, until we just wait and see that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
I think we can move on then to the administrative reports as our next item.
So Carrie's up.
Yeah, and then Carrie with the presentation.
This is just a quick update on what's happened with our project-based learning, and we included this, this was included because these are all the PBL units that were turned in to go through the correlation study. The great thing about, I would say this is a great thing, is that, okay, the first year, we've done this for 3 years now, where we've asked people, you know, we've gone through the professional development piece of it. The first year, we had 23 units that were turned in. The second year, we had 32 units turned in. Then the last school year, 2017-18, we had 63 units turned in. And one of the things that I think that we would all consider as very positive is we have got people that are now, it doesn't have to be all encompassing in this big, not that we don't want youth marketplace and all that, those are great things that are happening. But now it's going into our content areas. And I think that's exactly what the whole purpose of this is. One thing that I forgot to include on here, if you see an asterisk, that would be something that somebody did the previous year. But so a lot of these are brand new.
That's crazy.
So I think that I wanted you to be able to see what some of those were. If we could go back to that slideshow. Knowing though, okay, so we had 63 units that were turned in this year that we, as a lead team with administrative team and our instructional coaches, and then teachers that have been trained as AIW coaches, we came together for 2 days and we scored the units. And what we did is we scored it a task, which is a lesson that that the person that turned the unit in, whether it was a group or a single teacher, chose that this is the one they wanted feedback on. And then from that task, they also turned in pieces of student work. So, and then what they did, and this came from teachers, they turned in 5 pieces of student work. One that would be considered high, one that would be considered low, and then 3, what your typical work of that, from that, and then the 3 typical are what was scored. That's just, you know, that's just the way it's done. And the high and the low came as teachers said that they said, let's have people just do that. So we took their advice and we went with what the teachers wanted. If you go to, before you go to the next one, for the tasks and the student work that's scored, when the student work is scored, we score each individual piece of student work. So you go through, and for student work, you are scoring for the student's construction of knowledge, the student's conceptual understanding, and then the elaborated communication. And elaborated communication doesn't mean that it had to be something that the kids were physically talking to somebody, but what that means is you are asking them how did they express conclusions, how were their conclusions supported through coherent explanations or reasoning. So that's what the elaborated communication piece. Construction and knowledge is just really organizing, interpreting, evaluating, or synthesizing prior knowledge to solve whatever was asked in the task. And then this conceptual, oh no, that's something that, then, so that's what we scored for the task. For the student work, they did construction of knowledge, or never mind, I'm totally off. For the task, they scored construction of knowledge again, they scored elaborated communication, and then they scored the value beyond school. And the value beyond school, the first year we really hit that hard because we said, but then we backed off, it's not, you know, we're getting that public product piece from our kids. Now we said, okay, let's really look at that construction of knowledge because that's really what PBL is all about, is students constructing their own knowledge and digging in that way. So if we go to the next one, you're going to see our correlation study. What this does is the purple dots are the 2016-17, the units that were turned in, that we scored. The green dots are this last year, 17-18. So first of all, you can see where we have a lot more things that we scored. But when you look at this 10 going on this side is the task, the total of tasks. So we scored in 3 areas, and they can get a total of 10. Going down here is the student work, and on student work, you can score a total of 12. So when you see this way up here, that's what you're looking for. Now the great thing is, we've got a lot, this is where we want to be, and that's, you know, we obviously have a few outliers. We don't have as many outliers as we did the first year. And you can see we're moving in the right direction. Now, the units that were scored will be turned back to staff members for them to then, if they, I mean, I've already had people say, oh, you know, I want that feedback because I wanted to tweak that, and I mean, that's what it's all about. Now, teachers have the opportunity to tweak it, keep it, you know, whatever, however, I mean, if they're way up there, that's not saying you don't want to tweak it, but we don't need to keep looking at something that's good, that they're doing. So they can, if they want to revise, they can. If they want to keep it the same, they can. If they got the results they wanted. They can do another unit that they're going to implement, or they can take an area of focus of one of the 8 essential elements. Right now, the one that we want to focus on is driving question. Thank you. I was going to say big picture, and I'm like, that's not what it is. The driving question. So we're going to provide mini lessons during the year in PD, during our PD time, on that driving question. But they can also pick another area that they want. So kind of there's a little bit of voice and choice in there too. This one we want to do, but you can choose another one also. So we've got some voice and, you know, we've got some different opportunities for how that will look for next year. But we're still staying on that road. One thing I thought was really, on a little sidebar, as I was looking through the sessions for this Ed Leader 21 conference that we're going to, I noticed that there is a session about this with the work on that and how does it go with AIW. And one of the presenters is Bruce King, who is somebody that we have worked with in the past with the AIW work that we've done. So I just think it just goes to show how the work that we're doing is really tied to what we've done in the past. And that's a good thing, because a lot of times what you'll hear happen in education is teachers say, oh my gosh, you know, here we go again. But it's not. We've really worked hard to keep the groundwork of what we've been doing, and then how are we embedding that? Which reminds me, I wanted to tell you all that on, make sure I have the right day here. On Thursday, September 20th, in the afternoon, if you have any time, we have our AIW kickoff for our new staff members, and then we do a mentoring thing also. But that's not just for first or second year teachers, that's for any new teacher in the district. We want to give them that background so that when they're having those conversations in PLCs, they can feel comfortable with having that conversation with their peers. So we have that as our kickoff, and then we will set scoring dates that we do. We probably score together as new staff members 5 or 6 times throughout the year, where then we ask them to bring a task for us to score. So just an FYI in that. You can go to the next one.
I think that I went to that last year.
You might have come to one where we scored.
Yeah.
I think you did.
Carrie, what time?
It'll start at noon. We have a working lunch, and then we'll get into the work. So you are more than welcome. We'll be in here. You're more than welcome to join us. Teacher quality, just wanted to update a little bit on this. Last year, we changed up how that TQ where teachers submitted a personalized learning plan of what they wanted to do with that. We had 74 teachers that completed that plan last year. And you can, I just listed a few things there of what people did. This year, we've already had, I bet I've had 3 different book studies turned in already for this school year.
Wow.
And that's what this is about. This is about personalizing that learning. I think a big push is, we talk about that for students, but it's the same for teachers. All of our teachers are at different places. And there are times when we all have to sit and learn something together. But how are we meeting the needs of where everybody is professional, where they are professionally? And so we are really trying to differentiate that. So we're going to continue that this year. The plans are already, like I said, they're already online, and we're already getting them turned in. But one thing, and we did this from listening to feedback last year, we will be on May 8th, which is our last early dismissal day. We're going to have a showcase afternoon.
Very cool.
Where people we'll have different groups set up. It's kind of like a ed conference or ed camp, which is where you just get to talk and learn from each other and share out what did you do. We're going to do that for their teacher quality plans, hopefully ICDPs, and the mentoring projects that we've had done. So we're going to have all of that set up on that afternoon. So they can it's important to see what your colleagues are working on and what have they learned. So that is, I think I have one more slide on there.
Carrie, one thing before you move to the next slide, talk about how we used to do the TQ with the extra day for extra pay was a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then by doing it this way, this has just moved to such a more popular and I think more useful system for our teachers. It's a lot better than what we used to do.
And it took a lot of planning, and it was a great day, don't get me wrong. We had great sessions that we had planned, but our participation rate for this first time round is already, I'd say almost 10 people higher than what it had been for the TQ day. And then you have you can plan it to how you want to do it. So, you can do it now, you can do it in the winter, you can do it when it fits into your schedule, and when it fits, it just is personalized to teachers' needs. And, but I do think adding that, we had the share out piece built into it last year, but it was sharing out with your team, or you just had to have a report of how you did that sharing out. That's still in there, but now we've added, this is the extra piece, the sharing out on the whole group day or afternoon. I think I have one other slide on there. Just a FYI, for our professional learning for 2018-19, we are still, we've got that portrait of a graduate piece in there built into what our professional development will look like. Instructional, the IPI, where we've got those dates set up, and we start that next week, our first go round. And not only do we have the go round, the actual data collection day set up, we've already put on the calendar the date, review of data of what that will look like in buildings. Mental health, we will have our mental health day, or our guidance counselors are working on the mental health night that we did that last year in October. I think it's October 11th, maybe. I think that's when it is. I was just with them this afternoon, and they were finishing up some planning on that. We also will have our December early out day. We're going to be doing some district-wide mental health professional development at that same time. We did a cultural awareness. We did that on our pre-service day. and it was very well received. And we are going to do a follow-up. We have a follow-up plan for that because there's more than just we wanted it to be more than just a checkoff. So we've got to follow up on that. And then we still have our project-based learning piece in there too. So just an FYI on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie.
Are there any other administrator reports? Thank you, Carrie, very much for that. If not, all right, great. We're going to move on to celebrations and announcements.
Anyone want to add anything for celebrations or announcements?
Yeah, tell us.
We had a student that was recently selected as she entered an essay as part of her honors English class last year to the RAND Foundation and was selected as the only student in Iowa that had an essay selected by the RAND Foundation. So as an outstanding scholar in the area that they wrote about. So Kaisa Hatfield was her name, and she was a freshman last year, sophomore this year. It's kind of a big deal. So
That's amazing.
What is that? Can you spell that? What is the
the RAND Foundation.
RAND? R-A-N-D?
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
And they had to write on a specific topic. It was a national essay contest, and Mr. Hagbart had his honor students submit an essay based on a piece of writing that this RAND Foundation selected, and she was the only student from the state of Iowa to be selected.
That's
So it's outstanding.
cool.
I would just say the school year started off, I think really well. We just got our interventions going today. So it's been a good start to the year for us, at least at the middle school. So.
Same, intermediate, elementary and intermediate did part 1 fast testing last week and part 2 this week, and we'll start our Tiger Den groups.
Yeah, fantastic.
Officially, yeah. Yep.
Thank
Going
you.
well.
All right, excellent. Thank you all. Sounds great stuff. We're going to move on. We have one item of old business, and we're going to pluck out 103 since we already talked about that. We do not want to rehash that again. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
And so we're going to have a second reading of any of these. Does anybody here have anything that they want to pull out and discuss specifically? I don't recall anything from the first meeting that we're like, oh, we should talk about this more. Other than, again, the long-term priorities. I think we were kind of all in favor, especially on the miniature horses, big favorite of this group.
But didn't this work so that it showed the others, and then you highlighted, like sometimes it was just like a half a sentence that changed, right?
Yeah,
So-
some of them are totally new as well.
Right. And it
Or some of them are taken off too.
Right.
Yeah.
And one, just to Kim's comment, maybe one of the things when we get these policy primers that we meet with, I don't know who your committee was, I wasn't jotting down, but maybe we meet as a policy committee and just talk through this and say, okay, when we come to the board for this, let's just make sure that everyone, this is highlighted or this is underlined or this is taken out so that everyone knows exactly. Is that what you were trying to hit at?
I think this is just too much information to
To
process
grasp,
all
yep.
these policies completely the way they should be at a board meeting.
Yep. And what the difference of what Kim's talking about and what we did, like when we've done this before, is we've usually taken like a series and we tried to break that up.
Yeah.
But this is probably, I would probably agree with her, it's probably exactly right from the standpoint of this is a lot, even though it's not a series, but there's a lot of policies for you guys to look through. And yeah, so maybe what we'll do is when we get that policy primer, they come out, I don't know, quarterly or maybe even a little bit more, we can bring the policy group together. You all right with that, Brian?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, somebody's looked at a lot of policies over the last 3 years. None of these that I was like, oh no, we better really talk about it. These all seem pretty straightforward. Are there ones we had to fill in the blanks on?
Yeah.
That was my only question.
So the one that I was looking at was the bidding.
Purchasing a bidding.
Yeah. And just so that everybody, I think we're all on the same page, but that's when we had to fill in the blanks. So if you go to our policy, not the IASB one, the first page. Come here. So right there, yeah. So the categories are less than 10,000. Lindsay can do it. So just so that we're clear.
Yep.
10 to 50, we're asking for proposal quotation or bids, and I think there, the more the merrier.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed.
So if if we've only gotten one and it's next week when we're expecting to get, let's make some calls and try to get as much competitiveness in there, and then the cutoff is 50,000 in order to do a competitive bid, right? And I think that 10,000 is a good number because it frees you up to just make decisions and get it done.
I agree, thank you.
I'm almost thinking that we had that at the last meeting. It might have been, that we had talked about this at the last meeting, and I thought it was there, so I think it might have just been dropped or something, yeah, or maybe I added it in there last month and it didn't get it in.
So
I'll move to approve all with the exception of 103.
you have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I don't think
Who
anyone.
won the second?
No, okay, good. Yep, so we'll go ahead and approve all of those with the exception of 103, which we'll pull back in for a third contentious conversation, reading. Just kidding, sorry. All right, it's gonna be fun, John, thanks for letting me do
We
this.
might have made a mistake.
Yeah, you guys are real rowdy down there, I just say I'm out there. Yeah.
Sit by each other if you keep.
All right, so let's move on to 1601. Oof, it's gonna be tight, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Substantial completion.
Yeah, we're gonna do this. So this is the question. I'll just read this. Consider approved certificate of substantial completion for the 2018 elementary and intermediate school summer renovation projects with Harold Pike Construction. Sounds like we're really close.
Really, just a
Is that
fraction.
it? Are we substantial? I mean, this is the part I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we're substantial.
Because they wouldn't have let us have kids.
Yeah, we don't get occupancy if we weren't a substantial.
Okay. So I mean, we say yes to this, but does that sort of like?
Yeah, just working out the logistics of our some of the different add-ons with the security features and.
So
You've got locked out of your own office, is what I'm hearing. Not yet.
No.
Okay.
Why do I feel like that was worse, the way she said
Yeah,
that?
yeah, exactly.
I
You've
feel like
been
that was
locked in.
worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Moving on to designating depository banks for 2018-19. First American Bank with a limit of 15 million. That's right. ISJIT, I'm not going to try to say that. ISJIT, obviously. Oof. With a limit of 15 million and Bankers Trust with a limit of 100,000. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Lindsay recommends approval. So moved. Is that what you said, Kim?
Yep.
Second.
Seconded by Tyler. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands approved. All right, 1603, appoint Vic Vanderpool as level 1 designated investigator and Carrie Clark, Stacy Edwards, Amy Griffin, and Mike Danielson as alternate investigators of abuse of students by district employees. This is what it was last year, if I recall?
Yes.
All right.
Recommend approval.
All right.
Sorry.
No, do I have a motion? I love it.
So moved. Good.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands approved. Next one is appoint Carrie Clark as Equity Coordinator and Section 504 Coordinate, and appoint Lindsay Beecher as Title IX Coordinator.
So moved.
second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands approved. 1605, consider and approve allowable growth and supplemental aid for negative special education balance for the 2017-18 school year, or as determined after review by the Department of Education. And Gail, you briefly walked us through this.
Yeah, this allows us to add this to a cash reserve when we do the next budget year,
Okay, excellent.
if we have the capacity.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, man, look
You're moving.
at, we are doing great, y'all. Velocity's picked up. Consider and approve early graduation requests. I think we've all kind of read through them.
Yep.
I mean, I'm obviously not an expert in any of these people. Is this? Oh,
Yeah,
there's like 5 or 6 of them, yeah.
I would say that all students are in good standing. They've all had parent approval. They've all met with counselors.
Yeah.
There's a variety of reasons. Some families are moving. Some families have already moved and they want to go join their families soon. There's a couple of them that'll be kind of tight, but if they don't make it, they just return for the second semester, so there's nothing hurt or lost there. I would say I don't have any concerns with any of the requests.
Thank you. All right, well, do I have a motion to approve these early graduation requests?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, stands approved. Thank you. Thank you, Vic, for that help. So the first reading of revised board policies 213, public participation in board meetings, 502.3, freedom of expression and student protest, 606.3, our favorite animals in the classroom.
I want to make sure that the committee, the policy committee with Vic was also there, that says what you wanted to. I know that we talked about it. We had a lengthy discussion on, the one I'm talking about is 502.3, freedom of expression and student protest. When I looked at that, it just seemed like it kind of dangled out there a little bit, and it was not quite as, I don't know. Look at it and see if you think that there's something that needs to be.
There's
You got
minutes.
Right,
We
that's
have-
what we were just.
Yeah, minutes is,
So again, we're not approving these tonight. This is our first reading, but so we're all familiar with them. If there's questions we have
There's
now.
502 in there.
We have 5 currently,
5 minutes.
is
Yeah.
what's currently in
On.
what we've been,
The limit to the.
No.
Board meeting guidelines.
or I'm sorry.
So on the, yeah, this one, there's a fill in the blank one,
Yeah.
right?
5 minutes.
It's called the public, 213, or
Yeah.
public participation in board meeting.
That filling was supposed to be 5.
Yeah, I mean, that seems very, it's rare for us to break that, especially given that we have a second time as well. I mean, it never felt like it constrained people to.
And the board, and if the board wants longer, that's okay, but it's 5 minutes
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
the board saying we want to keep going.
Agreed.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like we can fill that in and then read it for a second time and approve it. Do we not have, sorry, 502.3, I know it's in our board packet, I looked at it.
Is it the next one? There it
Yeah,
is.
so, on the packet, it has,
That's,
this is
this
what
is the
we,
one.
right, so I'm speaking here as, on behalf of like a group of us who worked on this, Kim, Lindsay, and Vic got together and we talked about it, and we just want to make sure we're completely covered. And so, with the addition of what you see in yellow here, right, is we amended the title to say "and student protest," and then is made sure that we expressly said, hey, this list that's listed here is what we think of as a responsible expression, as long as it's, sort of bounded in by this thing, which those words had always been there, but it hadn't been clear that I was talking about what we thought as responsible. And so we just made sure, like, hey, this is what's responsible. We kind of ran through a few different scenarios, ones that we've encountered in the past, including the student walkout last year, as well as kind of weird random things that we could think of and say, like, hey, would this still fit? And we kind of tested it a bunch and thought, this feels pretty comfortable for us. Again, I'd love for your feedback either this meeting, most likely the next one as we encounter a second reading on this. As something that was really, again, just make sure it's covered, and Vic did a good job talking about how the students responded in the walkout, even following this, and meeting with him and talking about their intent. And while they were expressing their sort of displeasure at a particular thing, they did it in a really orderly process. Vic, do you want to add anything, or Lindsay or Kim? I mean, we're all there. It's a pretty small addition for how much conversation we had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it covers us, so.
And again, just the first reading, so you don't have to take any action on it. There is one more that's in there. I think it's animals in the classroom. Is that what it is? Yeah. So you can take a look at that.
Different than the last one that was in the second.
Yeah, that felt like we did animals in the classroom already, didn't
Right,
we?
wasn't that in the second? The second reading list?
That'd be
That was
old.
more service.
Oh, service, assistance.
Yeah, this
Yep,
is,
sorry.
That's basically if you want to
like
bring
show and tell, right?
Non-service.
Oh, this
Yes,
is show and
it's
tell.
not-
This one is, yeah.
Okay,
Show
yeah.
and
Or even bringing in, right, like, whatever, doesn't matter. But yeah, you have to just clear with people.
Yeah.
First reading, if you want anything changed, though, let me know. I can take it now, or I can, you can shoot it to me in an email.
Awfully devoid of miniature horses in that one. Okay. So there's no action to be taken on that. We can move right on to 1608. Oh, those people down at the end. Okay, so consider and approve 2018-19 Woodward Granger CSD Grantwood Consortium contract and special education instructional program contract.
So
Wow.
moved.
Second, this is the annual one we normally do. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Stands approved. Following up with the consider and approve the 2018-19 same people, the Academy Day School Program contract and General Education Instructional Program contract.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands approved. Thank you all for this. We're moving on. We're on to the second page. Oof. All right, and we're going to talk about considering and approving the 2018-19 YSS mentoring agreement. Again, this is an annual thing that we normally do.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands approved. And then public forum, we have this at the end of the meeting in case anyone heard something or had something to bring up. You came in late. Anything you want to talk through? All right. No, okay, great. Moving on. Next one. The consent agenda. We talked quite a bit about the finance and sort of wrapping up the last year. Are there anything, Gail, that you want to?
The bills, just regular, nothing other than the main payroll items. There's not tuitions all paid for, so it's just coming back to school, supplies, as you can see, officials, and payroll is probably the biggest thing. So nothing outside of the ordinary for back to school. Personnel.
You can take a look at it. I'm not going to go through and read each one. If you have any questions, I can sure pick it out. Again, it's kind of one of those deals. Lane changes, you're probably used to that if you've had an opportunity to sit here through the meetings, so that when they go ahead and pick up their educational hours, then they make a lane change. That's what that bottom is there for.
I really like the opportunity to keep Steve engaged, supervisor of grounds,
So this is a
and some
new
continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Dan appreciated the fact that they can, talk to each other and do some different things there.
That's good.
Excellent. And then the open enroll, again, is we have two,
I don't think there's any controversy.
three. Yeah, no, those
We
are
have
like.
three.
yeah,
This was
guarantees.
updated. If you looked at it earlier,
Yep.
this was updated. So.
Yep, excellent. That all looks good.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, stands approved. Thank you for all the hard work in there, everybody. Excited to see those teachers moving lanes. I like that. And the last item we have to talk about is the calendar. We have September 11th. The construction bid opening, that is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Really exciting. Can see our projections too for all the big dollars.
Yep.
Is that, we don't do anything, like, we don't have to be here, right?
You can come if you'd like.
No, that's just
Yeah.
that.
They literally
That's a
just
story.
open it.
Yeah.
I don't even know. They'll have no decision tomorrow.
Yeah,
Whether
they'll
they'll
just have
even
to
do something,
review.
they say, well, our estimate for this particular project, I don't even know if they'll have that.
They may just kind of say, give us a ballpark of, oh, we're way out, or,
Yeah,
we're fairly close, but nothing specific.
right.
But we would just sit and listen in attendance with everybody.
It's interesting if you ever haven't been to one, so.
And then the idea is they'll come back the next week, and that's when we'll have
Right, yeah.
a work session, just say, okay,
Perfect, okay.
this is how it's all laid out, do we want to approve it?
Yeah.
Is there something we don't want to approve?
Yep.
Do we want
So they don't have to be there tomorrow night,
separate
but you can see the
meetings?
process.
Right now, we're working with Travis on getting a cash flow and figure out when to do the 4
Yeah,
million.
yeah.
Trying to figure out, do we want to do it earlier and then pay interest, or do we want to earn it? Where's that good spot to be?
Yeah.
And so we're working on that right now. So it looks like that might be like November, December.
Will we have any more discussion of that on the 18th? If that's special meeting, or is that?
This is just mainly bids, and this will be part of the 10 million. The
Got it,
10
yep.
million that we went, our GO bonds of 10 million will cover the bid.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. So on the 18th, we have, as Tyler said, that meeting, and then October 8th, our regular board meeting. All right.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Thank you.
Second.
All right. All in favor of ending?
Aye.
All right.
Oh, in favor of ending.
7:33 p.m.
All right.
5 minutes, that's too bad.
Brian.
Yeah, we should have changed courses a long time ago, Brian.
Okay.
Oh, you got-
We have signatures.
Yep. I'm just gonna turn this thing off here.
Okay.
Where's that, Brad?
Well, normally I give it a big thumbs up, and then I